New clues now in the assault rifle attack on Rihanna's mansion as we're learning more about the woman police say opened fire on the Grammy winner's home. Eyewitness News reporter Liz Nagy live outside the Beverly Glen home with new revelations tonight. Liz.
Listen, Rihanna, when you die, God is taking me to my future.
On March 10, 2026, a courtroom in Los Angeles began reviewing the evidence against Rihanna's alleged attacker. Prosecutors presented a case involving a Florida resident, Ivana Lisette Ortiz, who authorities say drove to the Beverly Crest neighborhood and fired multiple rounds toward the singer's hillside residence. The incident had unfolded 2 days earlier on Heather Road, where investigators documented bullet impacts along the property's exterior gate and surrounding structures. According to law enforcement, several people were inside the home at the time, including Rihanna, her partner A$AP Rocky, family members, and staff. None were injured, but the attack triggered an intensive investigation by the Los Angeles Police Department. Within hours, officers located a suspect vehicle and made an arrest in Sherman Oaks. Yet the courtroom proceedings would eventually reveal that the shooting was only the visible end of a longer chain of events, one involving unexplained travel, overlooked online warnings, and investigative assumptions that initially misdirected the case. Here, we deliver clear, factual, and up-to-date true crime stories. Subscribe and turn on notifications to stay informed on the latest cases and investigations. The criminal case against Ivana Lisette Ortiz centered on the allegation that the shooting at Rihanna's home was intentional and carried out with knowledge that the property was occupied. Prosecutors filed multiple felony charges, including attempted murder, assault with a semi-automatic firearm, and shooting at an inhabited dwelling. These charges reflected the seriousness of the incident. Investigators determined that numerous rounds were fired toward a residence known to contain several occupants at the time of the shooting. Under California law, such charges can carry extremely severe penalties if proven in court. During the early legal proceedings, Ortiz was held in custody while the court evaluated the evidence presented by prosecutors. Bail was set at a high level due to the nature of the allegations and the potential risk factors associated with the case. Court hearings focused on reconstructing the events leading up to the shooting and determining whether the act had been planned in advance. Prosecutors described the event as deliberate, while defense attorneys examined whether the evidence clearly established intent. The final outcome of the case depended heavily on the sequence of discoveries made during the investigation. Each new piece of evidence clarified the timeline and helped determine how the events unfolded on the day of the shooting.
Terrifying moments at the home of singer Rihanna.
Please don't stop the music.
Authorities say the 38-year-old superstar was home in her Beverly Hills mansion when a woman drove up to the house and opened fire.
Two shootings just occurred, approximately 10 shots. Her DPR believes the shots came from across the street.
Officers say a woman in a Tesla started shooting an AR-style weapon around 1:15 in the afternoon. Multiple bullet holes visible in the side of Rihanna's home. We're told none of the bullets penetrated.
Suspect number one is a female Hispanic, blonde hair, 30 years.
Police using a helicopter to quickly identify the car and followed the driver to a local mall.
Drivers out of the vehicle, units are approaching the vehicle.
Copy that. One suspect in custody.
Officers then taking the suspect into custody without incident. It's unclear if Rihanna's 3 young children or her partner, A$AP Rocky, were also home. A$AP Rocky was acquitted of 3 criminal charges last year after being accused of firing shots at his former friend, A$AP Rocky.
Authorities are now trying to determine a motive for yesterday's shooting.
Investigators relied on several forms of evidence to build the case against Ivana Lisette Ortiz. One of the most significant elements involved ballistic analysis. Detectives documented multiple bullet impacts on the exterior of the property belonging to Rihanna. The rounds struck the front gate, nearby structures, and at least one neighboring property. The location of these impacts confirmed that the shots were directed toward an occupied residential space. Another key component involved the firearm believed to have been used during the incident. Authorities recovered a rifle from the vehicle associated with the suspect shortly after the shooting. Forensic testing allowed investigators to compare the recovered weapon with the shell casings found at the scene. Vehicle identification also played an important role. Witness statements and nearby surveillance footage helped investigators identify a white Tesla that had been parked near the entrance of the property shortly before the shots were fired. The vehicle left the scene immediately after the gunfire. Digital evidence added another layer to the investigation. Detectives reviewed social media accounts connected to Ortiz and found posts that referenced Rihanna in the weeks leading up to the incident. While these posts did not provide a clear motive, they became part of the broader investigation into the suspect's actions and possible intent. Together, these pieces of evidence created a framework that allowed prosecutors to link the suspect directly to the location, the weapon, and the timing of the shooting. The breakthrough in the investigation occurred shortly after the gunfire was reported. Residents in the Beverly Crest neighborhood of Los Angeles contacted police after hearing several loud gunshots during the early afternoon. Officers from the local police division were dispatched to the area and began gathering information from witnesses. Several witnesses described a vehicle leaving the area immediately after the shooting. The description of that vehicle, including its color and model, became the starting point for the search that followed. Using this information, officers located a vehicle matching the description in the Sherman Oaks district of the city. Police approached the vehicle and detained the driver, later identified as Ivana Lisette Ortiz. During the arrest, officers recovered the rifle believed to have been used during the shooting. This discovery provided investigators with immediate physical evidence connecting the suspect to the incident. The quick identification and arrest of the suspect prevented the investigation from becoming a prolonged search across multiple jurisdictions. However, the arrest also raised new questions about why the incident had occurred and whether the residents had been specifically targeted. In the early hours of the investigation, detectives considered several possible explanations for the shooting. One initial theory suggested the possibility of a random act of gunfire. Because the shots were fired from outside the property, investigators initially explored whether the incident could have been unrelated to the homeowner. Another possibility involved the chance that the intended target might have been a neighboring residence. Some of the bullets struck nearby structures, which briefly led investigators to examine whether the shooting had been directed toward another property in the area. A third theory focused on the possibility of a celebrity-targeted incident. As detectives began reviewing digital evidence, they discovered social media posts linked to Ivana Ortiz that referenced Rihanna. These posts led investigators to examine whether the singer had been specifically targeted. However, at the time, authorities had not identified any confirmed personal connection between the suspect and the celebrity. This absence of a direct relationship made it difficult to immediately determine a motive. As more evidence emerged, investigators began focusing more closely on the possibility that the residence itself had been the intended target. The shooting took place in the Beverly Crest neighborhood of Los Angeles, a hillside area of Los Angeles known for private estates and high-profile residents. According to investigators, the vehicle arrived near the entrance of the property and stopped outside the front gate. From that position, multiple rounds were fired toward the property using a semi-automatic rifle. Bullet strikes were later identified on the front gate and on structures located inside the property. One of the rounds also struck a neighboring residence located nearby. Despite the number of shots fired, no one inside the property was injured. Authorities confirmed that several people were present inside the home during the incident. Rihanna, whose full name is Robin Rihanna Fenty, is an internationally recognized musician, entrepreneur, and public figure. Her career began in the early 2000s and expanded rapidly through music, fashion, and business ventures. Over the years, she has built a global brand that includes cosmetics, fashion, and entertainment projects. Her business ventures and public visibility have made her one of the most widely recognized figures in the entertainment industry. Her residence in Beverly Crest reflects the type of property commonly associated with high-profile individuals. The neighborhood contains multiple private estates, many of which include security gates and surveillance systems. Because of her global profile, any incident involving her residence immediately attracted public attention and media coverage. As detectives continued examining the case, several earlier details became more important. One element involved the travel history of Ivana Lisette Ortiz. Investigators began reviewing whether she had traveled from Florida to Los Angeles shortly before the shooting and whether that trip had been planned in advance. Another factor involved social media activity linked to the suspect. Posts referencing Rihanna were discovered during the review of digital accounts associated with Ortiz. Authorities also examined prior legal records connected to the suspect. These records provided additional background information but did not immediately explain the motive for the shooting. At first, these details appeared unrelated to the incident, but as investigators reconstructed the timeline, they began to consider whether the travel history, online activity, and actions on the day of the shooting were connected. Even after the arrest and the filing of criminal charges, several important questions remained unanswered. The most significant question concerned the motive behind the shooting. Investigators attempted to determine why Ivana Lisette Ortiz allegedly traveled to the residence of Rihanna and fired multiple rounds toward the property. Another question involved whether the incident had been planned in advance or whether it occurred spontaneously. Authorities also attempted to determine whether the suspect believed the singer was present inside the residence at the time of the shooting. Finally, investigators examined whether there had been any previous contact between the suspect and the celebrity. At the time of the investigation, no confirmed personal relationship had been identified. As the legal process continued, these questions became central to understanding the full sequence of events that led to the shooting in Beverly Crest.